Imagine waking up and realizing that most people around you no longer question anything. The world has grown louder, faster, more saturated. The human mind wants a sharp instrument for inquiry, discernment, and growth is dulled into passive acceptance. Sit with that for a moment. What happens to a society when critical thinking vanishes? When the ability to reason, challenge, and reflect is replaced by instant reactions, surface-level opinions, and echo chambers? Today, we are going to expose the machinery behind the disappearance of critical thinking and the rise of something far more dangerous, collective stupidity. It's a phenomenon where crowds adopt shallow reasoning, accept narratives without examination, and surrender intellectual independence without even realizing it. At the end of this journey, a turning point awaits, a truth urgent enough to decide whether we reclaim our minds or lose them entirely to a system designed to keep us comfortably numb. Before we begin, a fair warning: this may challenge your assumptions, unsettle your certainties, and illuminate the blind spots most of us carry. Share it with those who still believe truth isn't a label, it's a path. Let's start with discomfort. Thinking is hard to end today. It's discouraged. The modern environment doesn't reward contemplation, it rewards speed, emotional reaction, and conformity. That isn't an accident. Platforms serve what one wants to hear. Educational structures prioritize memorization over exploration. Routines are compressed into short-form urgencies. The result is predictable. We consume without investigation, agree without understanding. Critical thinking has become an obstacle. It slows outrage, complicates debates, punctures slogans, and asks, but is this really true? In a culture obsessed with being right, asking that question alone looks dangerous. How did we get here? One engine is information overload. Notifications, messages, breaking news, opinions, ads, updates, and unbroken stream. The mind wasn't built for this volume. Under pressure, the brain takes shortcuts. Instead of examining ideas, it looks for signals. Instead of logic, it hunts for social cues. What peers think, what an authority suggests, what racked up millions of likes. There's a name for that: social proof. Useful in complex environments, but easily gamed. A post with heavy engagement feels, reflexively, important or true. That isn't reason, it's a heuristic. And that's why collective stupidity spreads so easily, not because people are unintelligent, but because they're being trained to follow signals. Instead of arguments, there's another quiet force at work: the erosion of deep reading. We tab hop, skim paragraphs, fracture attention, but real thinking requires staying power, analysis, reflection, comparison. All of it needs sustained focus. When attention breaks, understanding breaks. And when understanding breaks, complex ideas are replaced by punchlines. Punchlines please algorithms and fail reality. We live in a society dependent on science and technology, but rarely educated to understand them. The problem isn't isolated ignorance, it's the erosion of the ability to think about the systems that hold us up. Amid hot takes and ideological warfare, the rarest rebellion is thinking clearly. It isn't just technology or education, it's emotion. Critical thinking hurts. It forces us to admit ignorance. It confronts the ego. It triggers cognitive dissonance when cherished beliefs clash with stubborn facts. In a culture that worships certainty, performance, and identity, that's threatening. We swap investigation for defense, dialogue for attack, questions for mantras. We abandon dialectic, the honest friction of ideas that propelled philosophy, and hug slogans instead. What's lost isn't just debate, it's the mental muscle that keeps freedom standing. The consequences are serious. Without thinking, questions disappear. Without questions, manipulation grows. In the vacuum, propaganda. In the noise, fear. And a question must be asked: who benefits when a population stops thinking for itself? To understand the roots, we have to look beneath the surface and see how systems were shaped not to nurture critical thought, but to prune it. Start with education. The industrial model prized predictability, bells, lines, tests, right answers. Instead of how to think, we trained what to think. Originality is hard to grade. In bulk, curiosity is hard to standardize. The implicit message becomes: follow the rules, fill in the blanks, don't complicate. And this pattern echoes into adult life. At work, in media, among friends, questioning consensus carries a cost. Fear of labels, social exclusion, and status loss silences legitimate doubts. Over time, silence becomes complicity. There's a deeper engine, fear of uncertainty. Real thinking doesn't promise neat endings. It requires living with doubt without losing the center. Meanwhile, the market sells instant certainty. Algorithms reward high-octane emotions, anger, euphoria, outrage. They don't measure truth. They measure dwell time, clicks, repetition. The result is an information diet that feeds excitation, not illumination. The medium molds the mind. If the format demands speed, we think fast. If the rules reward shouting, dialogue dies. When truth is traded for what goes viral, we arrive at a cognitive tyranny of the majority. Ideas are judged by applause, not evidence. It's comfortable, it's profitable, and it's dangerous. So where do we go? Start with better questions. What am I being led to believe? Who benefits? What assumptions prop up my certainty? How often do I seek out the opposing view not to own it, but to understand it? The antidote to collective stupidity isn't just intelligence, it's courage. Courage to be wrong, to learn again, to say I don't know and keep going. Courage to lose applause and gain clarity. Practice matters. Recover rituals of attention, read long texts, write down doubts. Revisit ideas after a night's sleep, elevate real dialogue. Questions before assertions, listening before rebuttal. Enforce algorithmic hygiene. Turn off non-essential notifications, hide addictive shortcuts. Set limits in arenas that trade depth for friction. Shape the environment so the mind can think. There's a counterforce, the social cost of thinking differently. Yes, it will sting. Yes, there will be misunderstandings, but the payoff is real. Self-respect, the quiet peace of knowing your beliefs are yours, examined, tested, refined. When that happens, tricks lose their shine, slogans go hollow, easy promises show their hidden price. You stop being a passenger in someone else's narrative and become the author of your map. This is only the first step. In the next chapter, we'll go inside the mind into the mechanisms that make us vulnerable and the practices that return the center of gravity. The battle doesn't start out there. It starts here, now. In the quiet space between a stimulus and a response, stay. The most important part is still ahead. To understand the rise of collective stupidity, we need to step onto the stage where it actually unfolds. The brain. We like to believe we decide based on truth, but most of the time we decide based on familiarity. Speed and comfort. The mind runs on the floors. One fast, automatic, emotional. The other slow, analytical, effortful. Our world pressures us into the first. Notifications, deadlines, instant debates. Slow thinking has become a luxury. And when the slow is absent, the shortcut rules. Shortcuts have names. One is confirmation bias. Once a belief settles in, the system works to defend it. We seek what confirms and ignore what contradicts. Another is herd behavior. If many believe it, it must be true. Another is availability. What's most memorable feels more probable than it is. These mechanisms aren't moral failures, they're cognitive economies. But in the hands of those who understand attention, they become invisible chains. There's also a social dynamic, groupthink. The desire for harmony and belonging nudges the centers into silence. In homogeneous circles, extreme ideas can feel moderate because contrast is missing. Bad decisions start with small concessions. Let it slide. Not worth the friction now. Just this once. By the time anyone notices, consensus has solidified not by the force of argument, but by the fatigue of conflict. History shows that progress often begins with those who refuse. Mental obedience. That's not romanticizing suffering. It's recognizing a constant. Every era has its orthodoxy. Ours sells quick certainties packaged as performative content. The resistance starts with integrity. The refusal to outsource one's own conscience. Bring this closer to home. Why do so many, despite access to more information than any generation, feel lost, anxious, unfulfilled? Because information without structure becomes noise. Noise without pause becomes anxiety. We've lost the habit of inner dialogue, that honest conversation, where a hypothesis meets its strongest objection, and to fight until one gives way or both evolve into something better. When we outsource that workshop to public opinion, we kill the forge where legitimate conviction is made. What can we do? Start with metacognition, thinking about your thinking. Ask, what's influencing my judgment right now? Emotion, fatigue, belonging, interest. Say out loud the best version of the case against your belief, not to betray it, but to test it. If it survives, it's stronger. If it collapses, be grateful. You traded a weak certainty for a sturdier truth. Second, Deliberate attention. Design blocks for deep reading. Choose fewer sources and go deeper. Quick grazing 20 tabs and enter with intensity. Right questions. Don't read to win an argument. Read to understand reality. The mind doesn't grow by piling headlines. It grows by sustaining long chains of reasoning. Third, real dialectic. Seek conversations with people who disagree in set roles. Active listening. Questions before claims. Steelmen present the other side better than they can. The goal isn't to win, but to illuminate. Many beliefs only look robust because they've never left the bubble. Fourth, algorithmic hygiene. The medium shapes the habit. Turn off non-essential notifications. Remove addictive icons from your home screen. Set time boundaries for apps that monetize distraction. Curating your inputs isn't pretentious. It's sovereignty if the environment is designed to capture you. Redesign your small territory to reclaim command. Fifth, epistemic humility. Replace I know with as far as I know. Swap I'm certain for current evidence points too. That isn't weakness, it's armor against manipulation. The need to look right at all costs makes easy prey for any narrative that promises instant certainty. Now the center nerve, fear. The deepest reason critical thinking disappears is an incapacity, it's fear of what it reveals. Thinking risks identity, relationships, status. In a culture where who you are gets tangled up with what you believe, questioning ideas feels like self-erasure. That's an illusion. You are not your party, your tribe, or your feed. You are a person capable of changing your mind without betraying yourself. The courage to separate self-worth from current belief is liberation. Without it, the mind handcuffs itself to the past. There's a deeper dimension. Thinking is a spiritual act, not in a sectarian sense, but as a commitment to honor truth over comfort. It requires looking inward and catching our self-propaganda, the justifications we invent to preserve a soothing narrative. Seeing it hurts, but pain isn't the enemy. It's proof something real is being touched. When you accept this discipline, the world shifts into focus. The difference between information and propaganda becomes stark, between education and indoctrination, between connection and performance. You become harder to co-opt, not because you turn cynical, but because you turn attentive. Attention is the invisible currency of the digital age. Whoever owns it decides what enters and takes root inside. And what about the collective? Deep minds attract anti-noise communities. People who prefer productive silence over sterile spectacle. Who trade clapbacks for clarity. Who value this sentence? I don't know, but I can find out. That's the social fabric that sustains freedom. Less performance, more substance. If the goal is to change the world, change the way you think and the way you protect your thinking. It's less glamorous than a viral rant, but infinitely more powerful. Collective stupidity isn't a primary cause. It's a symptom of fear, fatigue, and the outsourcing of conscience. Every honest act of thinking pushes back the tide. Every pause before reacting, every question before sharing, every I might be wrong. Before concluding, this is politics at the highest level, the politics of the mind. Here's a practical, concrete, doable protocol you can start today. 1 long text a week. Read it fully. Annotate. Questions. 1 monthly conversation with someone who disagrees under rules of listening. And steel manning. Redesign your digital environment in 1 afternoon. Notifications, icons, time limits. Write a list of assumptions about 1 core topic in your life. Test 1 per month. Create a daily 20-minute silence ritual. No screens. No music. Just questions. Don't wait for platforms, schools, or institutions to do this for you. This work is non-transferable, and once you begin, you'll notice something. A mind that wakes does not go back to sleep. The light stings, but it guides. In an era of noise, leadership isn't about shouting louder. It's about thinking deeper. That is the most revolutionary gesture available right now.